So as I'm looking at her face, I'm going to be working in her face here, but I do want to make sure we can see how soft her hair is to her where it meets her forehead. And so I do want there to be a lightness there, not a hard line. So I'm just using water to soften and even bring out a couple of curls there. I work wet on dry to begin with. And right now I'm kind of following the mid-tone pattern. I can even afford to get a little bit more value in here, right to begin with. A little bit more. So I'm laying in where I see more of the mid-tone, and then where I see it come into the light, I am into kind of like your light pattern, or in terms of value, I am using water to shape those nuances through. So where I see her forehead, it's almost like a little bit more red in her forehead, and it comes down into her nose. I'm not going to be able to look at the chat anymore for a bit because I'm concentrating now. All right, so we're coming into the nose where her and this is where the light of the interior light is hitting her a little bit more hard. It's going to be it's a little bit more orangey. So I'm just getting pigment from my orange and I'm kind of charging the wash. Now, I don't want this to dry hard, and it's a soft transition to that highlight there. So I'm using water and I'm touching the edge of that wash to just allow that transition and the water to do its thing here. I was going to work in her eyeballs. Sometimes I have a lesson plan ahead and I get distracted by my own talking and I go off. There's a lot of blues in this area as well. So this is a time when we don't need to be too afraid of colors talking to each other in that first wash. I am going to be trying to be a little bit mindful of where the highlights are so I can at least preserve a couple of paper white highlights. If you need to, blow up that picture of the white of her eye, and you see that it's not white. There's actually a lot of value in there. And there's a lot of blue being reflected from the underside of her, whatever she's wearing. It's kind of reflecting into the recess of her socket. I want to keep things soft. So I'm trying to manage all of my edges as I'm painting this initial wash. As well, I do see just a little bit of cool. So in that reflected area, of a board, there's a reflected light coming on the edge of her side of her face, and it's just ever so slightly cooler. So I'm placing that in. I'm trying to be really cognizant of keeping everything really soft right now. Often, especially when I'm painting in live workshops with people in person, people express a little bit of fear or upset that they may have ruined their painting. I think it's really hard to ruin a painting this early on, like even if colors were to creep into areas where you don't want to. Yep, so I'm kind of thinking about midtones, this side of her cheek where, natural blood vessels kind of gather is going to just be a little bit more reddy pink, maybe a little bit warmer towards the top, and then getting a little bit cooler into the pinks around the bottom. So I'm almost you've noticed I don't actually, I'm not using a lot of mixing. I'm allowing the paint to mix on paper. Grabbing a little bit more blue through here. Even though her nose is pretty neutral in color, as an artistic choice, I'm just going to make it a little bit more on the pink side of things. Just because I want to give emphasis to that redness in the nose. This transition has landed a little bit harder than I wanted, so I'm just adding water while it's still wet to soften. I'm not concerned about blooms or anything at this time. As a stylistic choice, as someone who just enjoys watercolor, I quite enjoy those little surprise blooms that you're not anticipating or expecting, maybe not even wanting. But that kind of the chaos of it, I like to work with and try to make something beautiful out of those unexpected parts. Lips tend to be soft, and so you want a soft edge. I'm not going to use red. I'm going to mix my red using crossing my pink with an orange. For me, there's lots of ways to do underpaintings, but you've seen underpaintings where people almost just use blue as an underpainting to kind of give emphasis to that fleshiness that can happen once you paint over it with your blue underpainting with a flesh tone. And so even though this is very blue right now, I know later that we can do a couple of glazes to make that more fleshy. And I'm going to allow that blue to just bleed right into her neck, just so her neck is, a little bit more connected to her body. And eventually this will connect to her, what do you call it? Her pajamas or whatever it is she's wearing. A little bit of pink. Even if I feel like, oh yeah, that might be a little bit too heavy, can always just grab a little water to adjust it. I'm making artistic choices as I'm going through. I'm editing it as I am painting. Just have a little bit of connection through here. There's a little bit of coolness here. Having a little bit of that coolness on the side as well as a little bit, if you're a landscape painter, I'm not the best landscape painter, but thinking about atmospheric perspective. And so your blues tend to recede in a painting, and then your warms tend to move forward. So I'm going to, similar with portraiture as well. So the coolness of the neck there will recede, and the yellows are going to help that come forward. That's getting a little wet, so there's only so much I can do here. All right. We've kept this nice and soft up here, so because of that, we can easily work into that and not have a hard line. Starting to lose a little bit of strength in my pigments here. Have a little, throw in a little yellow across here. Still want it to be soft. Okay, so what I might do, here, let me just drop down a brush size since I'm working with an eye. I'm picking up my Paleba Diamond Blue and just gonna go into the iris. I'm gonna let that connect, and even the colors connect here. But the sclera, or the white of the eye, is not, as I said, not as white as you might think. If I get a chance, I will blow up that photo for you and just talk about how the value, there's actually a lot more tone in it. So again, I'm kind of like, I placed my pigment where I see the mid values are, and I'm just using water to kind of connect in through to kind of create a soft value change. Letting the blue bleed into and connect with the rest of the wash. Maybe I'll just give emphasis to under her eye socket area. I'll just add a little bit of warmth on this eyelid. And here, a little bit more emphasis on the redness around here. When we're doing lines on the mouth, don't, okay, I say don't. I would suggest trying to have, thank you, sorry, Stoyanka. Thank you for sticking by. Okay, even though you see a hard line, I would still leave gaps in the mouth just so that you can, hard lines and solid lines tend to trap the object in. And then you've got broken lines, and it kind of keeps the object or the subject more alive. So and your brain kind of fills in the gaps anyway. So that's probably what attributes to my paintings looking a little bit more loose, if at least so I'm told. Sometimes I feel like I paint really tight, but people say I paint loose. um, and that's no knock on the other person. It's just, I guess I'm always thinking I want to be looser. I don't paint loose enough. Not that loose is right. It's, you know, again, my artistic preference. It's my, one of it's the aesthetic I enjoy. It's not a right or wrong thing. Here, yeah. Typically, not always, but the bottom lip is typically cooler than the top lip because of the way light falls. Just whatever lip you're drawing, just keep that in mind. It's a bit more of a mid-tone on the top here. I really could, as I'm looking from a distance, I feel like I can push this part back. Can you see how this is kind of coming out a little bit more than it needs to be? Probably because this value here is a lot lighter than it needs to be. It's still, this value is still darker than this value, so it's still reading, but it's a little bit maybe overemphasized. And I think as I'm looking, I can probably just, this part of her chin or lower cheek can just recede a little bit.
A couple of questions more from Tanya. She's been busy.
Amazing. Good.
And one of them is, how do your portraits differ if they're not done for commission. So while you paint this one, maybe share what the difference in your process can be.
Yeah, so with a commission, I will typically spend more time um talking with the person and making sure that I'm getting their vision. When I'm dealing with a commission, I'm not dealing I'm of the position that it's not so much about my vision anymore, it's about the other person's vision. So I don't get upset if they, want more detail, if they want a certain color scheme, they want me to add, subtract, whatever. I'm a little bit more I hold that with an open hand. And because it's with a commission, I would typically make sure I have a lot more planning with it so that I can eliminate any points of disagreement and make sure my customer is really happy. For a painting that I'm painting just for fun, sometimes I would just do that completely intuitively. Like usually with a painting that is just for fun, I already have a vision for what I want it to feel, to say, and because of that, I work from my intuition more, my practiced intuition. Sometimes if I'm working for a piece that's a little bit more serious, where I really want to consider the composition and the composition of values, especially for a piece which I might eventually want to enter to a competition, then I would, what's the word? I will plan that a little bit better. The more complex the composition, the more I will do planning. So, I mean, even as I look at this a little bit smaller still, I can see how I can, strengthen the composition by maybe pushing this black a little bit more. If I pop this, if I put some black, something a lot more darker, it's going to really help her shoulder pop out a little bit more from the frame. So I might, because right now in terms of values, it's, just, yeah, we could try that while I talk, but yeah, I would probably pop this out a little bit more and give it a little bit more depth. And then, yeah, difference. Yeah. So basically, if it's for fun, I usually don't plan it sometimes as much because I already have the vision very clear in my head. But for someone else's vision, I will have to plot down their vision.
Thanks a lot. And then we have one question. How do we avoid when painting brown on someone's face that looks good and not like dirt?
Yeah, good question. I think that's why I start off with such vibrant colors. Um, when I start off with vibrant colors, I um, the vibrancy forms my undertones, and then I'm thinking more. I only use browns for those mid-tone, like the mid-dark tones, um, mostly. So I'm thinking about browns more for mid-dark tones, and then you're thinking about value, how to adjust value using water or removing water in order to create deeper values. Hopefully that, yeah. Does that help answer it?
Yeah, thank you so much. And Naomi writes, every time I listen to you, I learn more and more.
Oh, good. Thank you, Naomi. So glad you're here.
And then we have a Zoom user, the Zoom user again, writing, do you recommend let your portraits painting rest one day or two and review it with fresh eyes?
Yeah, so that's thank you for pointing out. So yeah, when someone asks me how long a commission takes, I'm not painting back to back in one day. I'm painting, what's the word? I'm painting over several days with many breaks because and it just helps me take my time and plan my next step a little bit better. When I'm teaching, I'm having to problem solve on the fly. So it's a little bit different. Um, yes, I really try to take my time.
I
Good question.
love that explanation because, like, how long does it take to paint a portrait? Like, it was 4 hours, and then all of a sudden it's several days. Like, it depends on how you ask and what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
looking
yeah.
for. Super valuable. And we have another question, which was from Lori. Do you charge when you price your commissions, is that per inch or per hour or per time that you spend or
Um,
something
yeah,
else?
Yeah, great question, Laurie. There are many models in which and there's no right model. Um, but um, what I would do is I, I, sorry, I'm painting. Okay. So for me, what I tend to do here, let's just have some face-to-face time. What I like to do when I price it is some artists will price per square inch. Um, you can do that, but um, not the algorithm, the formula for that would be length times height times price. I don't like to do that. I like to actually charge height plus length times price. Because if I charge per square inch, it increases the prices significantly. So if you consider that, like, I could have, for the size of this painting, it's actually just a head, right? So it's like this is like a 9 by 12. For a 9 by 12, I'll charge X amount. And for me to accomplish the background that I'm kind of slowly developing a little bit more and more now, it actually, in terms of my thought and labor, it doesn't take that much. But if I charge price per square inch, it's going to increase the value of this part exponentially. I find it a little bit more approachable. That's just part of my values. In order to make portraits more accessible to people, that's why I go by that formula. It's also what framers, the same formula that framers would use. So if you're framing your artwork, they tend to charge length plus width times price. So I hope that helps. No right or wrong answer. Everyone's different. That's just how I do it.